Shalom, family. Judah here again. Another video. We're actually going to go a little bit deeper into the second wave of the judgment of Yahuwah, of Yah, right now. Of course, earlier I uploaded a video, and after getting a little workout in, a little prayer, Most High spoke to me again. He said, "Go deeper, go deep." Actually go through the scripts with them. Don't just mention the scripts to them, but go through them with them. So here I am again, because it is important for us to know. The Most High has his reasons, but it's important for us to understand what our Messiah said regarding this end time, and just specifically what the scripts say about it, because we're definitely in that time. We're not waiting, we're not guessing, we're in that time. So, we're go ahead and turn to Matthew 24. There we go. Yep, go ahead and turn to Matthew 24. We're going to get into this thing. And we're actually going to kind of get the context here. And again, I had mentioned this in the prior video, where the disciples actually came to Hamashiach, to the Messiah, and they asked him, what are the signs of the end time? So we're actually going to go to Matthew chapter 24, start at verse 1. And, as the Ruach, as the Spirit gives insight, I'm going to be stopping and saying what he's speaking. But right now, he's definitely heavy in Matthew 24, leading me to speak on this. So we're going to start at verse 1, where it says, "And Yahushua went out and departed from the temple, and his Talmudim, or disciples, came to him for to show him the buildings of the temple. And Yahushua said to them, See ye all these things? Truly I say to you, that there shall not be left here one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down or hewn down." In other words, he's talking about the Solomon's temple, or really Yahuwah's temple, that under Solomon's leadership, was built in Jerusalem. He's prophesying about the destruction in 70 AD. Many of you who probably know this, and for those of you who don't know, in the year 70 AD, the Roman Empire came and completely destroyed Jerusalem, specifically the temple. They ransacked the temple. They took all of our chosen vessels, our vessels of gold, of silver, of wood that our priests would use, instruments of the daily sacrament or the daily sacrifice. They took all of those things. They took our scriptures. As a matter of fact, you can look online and get more research of this. Just type in 70 AD, destruction of Jerusalem, destruction of the temple in Jerusalem, and all of that information will definitely pop up. So he's prophesying of this. Verse 3, he says, "And as he sat upon the Mount of Olives, the Talmudim came to him privately, saying, Tell us when these things shall be, and what shall be the sign of your coming and of the end of the world." So verse 3 right here in Matthew chapter 24, you can literally see the context, right? Is the disciples literally were asking him specifically, let us know, give us some details about your coming. Give us some details about your return, because obviously this is well after he had told them he was going to be crucified and go to give up his life for Israel, right? So verse 4 says, "And Yahushua answered and said to them, Take heed that no man deceive you. For many shall come in my name, saying that I am the Messiah, or Hamashiach, and deceive many. And you shall hear of wars and rumors of wars," right? "See that you be not troubled, for these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet." So in other words, he starts off by saying that, first of all, it's going to be a lot of deception. It's going to be a lot of false prophets, a lot of false teachers giving out instruction that don't come from the Most High. And how do you know that? You can actually look on our YouTube videos from a few months ago, from back in March. We did a video entitled, I believe it was entitled, "Beware of false prophets." And that video will give you full details as to how you can spot a false prophet, one who is claiming to be of the Most High and really is not. Okay, so anyway, he's saying that when you start to see these people rise up, understand that, you know, that's the first sign of the end times. And for years, many years, we've had various, even still to this day, there are many false prophets with big followings that are leading people away from Torah, leading people away from Hamashiach. As a matter of fact, even in the awakening, people, and when I say awakening, I'm referring to those of us who know who we are as a people, who know who we are as a nation. We know that we're not African Americans. We know that we are the bloodline descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We are Israel. Those of us who know that, there are people in this awakening who, there's one guy in particular who referred to himself as the Comforter. That's blasphemy. So again, that's an example of deception. A person who is not being led of the Ruach, is not being led of the Most High, but is speaking as if he is. Right? So the Messiah, the first thing he said, before he goes into detail about the pestilence, which is, you know, what we're really going to get into. Before we get into that, the first thing he said was, you know, take heed or pay attention that no man deceives you, right? Then he says, many shall come in my name saying, I am Mashiach, or I am Messiah. So you got a lot of people who claim to be Christ. If you Google right now, people who have claimed to be Christ within the past, I don't know, 40, 50 years, more than 15, 20 people will come up. Not just in this nation, but all across the world. There are people who have rose up to claim to be Mashiach, or claiming to be the Messiah, right? And obviously we know that none of those people are the Messiah, because what is explained later in this chapter did not happen with them. And on top of that, you know, Torah, the Bible says that everybody will see him in his coming, in his return. He will be coming in the cloud. So we haven't seen that. All the things that were supposed to have been fulfilled have not been fulfilled yet. So we know that none of those people are Hamashiach. So let's just keep reading. Let's see what else he says. He says, and ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. So in other words, when you look on CNN and you look on, I don't know, Fox News, when you look on all the various news outlets, they've been, I mean, as long as I've been alive, they've always been talking about wars in various places, all over the world, not just in America, not just in the Middle East, not just in Africa, not just in Europe, not just in Australia, not just in Asia, but all over the world. They talk about wars. And so understand that this part, as far as the false prophets and the wars and rumors of wars, this has been in the play for, I really want to say, the past 100 years or so. Maybe even deeper. But for sure, since we've had media outlets and news to actually monitor and hear about these things, right? This has been in the play, okay? So understand that first, that this part has been in operation. Now he's going to go a little bit deeper. He's going to go a little bit deeper in verse 7. Well, verse 7 is really the verse that leads us to where we are today. And you'll see it once we read it. Verse 7. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, right? And there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in diverse places. Stop. Now, for one, the nation rising against nation, we've witnessed that as a nation, right? So we witnessed the United States go into Iraq, completely take it over, and now that, you know, they called it a dictatorship and they made it a quote unquote democracy, but we witnessed the United States go in there and completely destroy that land and tear down its government. We witnessed the United States do that in Afghanistan. We witnessed the United States do that in Libya with Gaddafi under Barack Obama. So we witnessed nations rising up against other nations. Not only that, but in the Middle East and in other places, we witnessed the same thing. I'm not going to go into details, but we've seen that within the past few years. We've physically seen that, right? So let's go deeper into the pestilence, the famines, right? So first he says, and there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in diverse places. Understand that a famine is not just a shortage of food, right? I mean, yeah, it's linked to that, but a famine specifically is a shortage of access to food, meaning that there's still food on the planet, there's still food in different places, but because of the high demand for it, your access to it is limited. That's really what a famine is, right? Now, of course, there are levels to famines. You know what I mean? I'm not gonna say that in a situation where there is no food, that of course that is a famine. And some of the first famines we see in the book of Genesis with Abraham, when he was in the land of Canaan, and there was a famine, and he ended up going to Egypt, right? Not under the Most High's direction, but he just ended up going to Egypt. We see it again when our ancestors were had to go there because Yosef, our great uncle, was sold as a slave, right? And he ended up in Egypt. You can read about that story, go through the book of Genesis, and you'll get more details about that. But anyway, during that time period, there was a famine. So what I'm saying is famines have been around. You know, even after that, you'll see other biblical examples of famines. But this is talking about now, it's talking about the end time. So let's go back to a few months ago when the coronavirus, COVID-19 first was talked about, right? And the nation here started to become in an uproar, and governors were shutting down states and putting, stay-at-home regulations on people. Understand what that means is that during that time period, toilet paper was virtually unbuyable for a good month and a half, maybe even longer than that. Not only that, but food was, guess what? It was they was buying up all the food in Walmart, Whole Foods, Kroger, the Spartan store. I mean, we in Detroit, so we have Spartan stores and other places. So make a long story short, food began to be of a shortage, which is another, I guess you could say, idea of a famine. That's included in a famine when there's a shortage of food. So again, we physically have seen and witnessed this, what's being spoken here in Matthew 24. We're witnessing it, right? So, and trust me, it's going to get deeper. And I have to say this because Most High lead me to say this. Store up on your water and canned foods, especially for those of you all in the inner city and you might not be in a position to physically be able to grow your food. Store up on canned foods. Store up on water, bottled water. I mean, if you still got a faucet that runs water right now, you need to be filling up as much water as you can, because there is going to come a point where that is going to be cut off, right? And that also goes into play with the famine, a shortage of water as well as a shortage of food. So that was just a sidebar, but important sidebar. So let's keep going here. That's just the famine aspect. Pestilence, that's a disease. That is a deadly disease, meaning a disease that can kill you, that can kill people, right? COVID-19 is what? It's a form of pestilence, because how many people have died? Over 1 million globally, probably more. In the United States alone, over 100,000 people. And by the way, pestilence is not new. This goes back to Egypt. This goes back to, the book of Exodus. There was pestilence over the land of Egypt when we were in captivity. So again, this is nothing new. The Bible talks about how there's nothing new under the sun. These are biblical events, are cyclical, meaning that it might have happened at one time period of history and again at another time period of history, and will probably happen again, right? So again, COVID-19 falls into the form of a pestilence, right? The end is not yet. That's why this video and the last video I just did is entitled The Second Wave of Yah's Judgment. Because again, this is not it. The judgment is still at hand. It's still happening. We're in the middle of it, right? This is actually the beginning of it, technically. And if we keep reading, you'll see. So going back to verse 7, there should be famines, pestilences, and earthquakes in diverse places. earthquake, and you know, I've actually experienced an earthquake. I lived in California for 4 years, and during that time period, I physically felt an earthquake. Not only that, but I mean, we know that California is on a fault line, the San Andreas, and I think there's another fault line. I forget the name of it, but there are fault lines in San Andreas or in California, which ultimately means that the ground has plates. The earth is made up of plates, and fault lines are the line in between plates. And what causes an earthquake is when the plates do like this, right? They shift. That's what causes buildings, cars, roads, all these houses, different things to move and shift because the earth plates are doing like this, right? But I mean, it's known that because California sits on a fault line, there are earthquakes that frequently happen there, right? That's everybody knows that. But in places like Michigan, where we don't sit on a fault line here, but guess what? There have been earthquakes. There was an earthquake here recently. I want to say within the past 2 or 3 years. I can come back with more facts and details on that, but I definitely remember hearing about an earthquake that was here, right? Now, I don't know if I was actually living here during that time. That might have actually been when I was living in California, but to say the least, there have been earthquakes in diverse places, and not only earthquakes, but tornadoes, hurricanes, natural disasters. And understand that the Most High is in control of the weather. I don't care what nobody has told you, what type of YouTube videos that you've seen, what type of technology is out there. The Most High controls this earth and this weather. He also controls the pestilences and the famines, and we're going to read about that shortly. But I just want you to get a living picture of what's physically going on here in this land. It's under judgment, right? And just because they're opening, I'm going to say, I said this in the last video, and I'm going to reiterate this so that you can see, according to what the text says, that just because you see states opening up, jobs opening up, restaurants, bars, stores, shops, malls, movie theaters, all this stuff that has been closed down, just because you see these things opening up and in operation does not mean that the judgment has been let up or that the Most High still doesn't have his hand over this plague. Because when you look, oh, by the way, the biblical definition of a plague, the Hebraic definition of a plague, let's go over that. It goes back to the Strong's number 5062, Hebrew lexicon number 2377V, right? So that's the English word plague. But the Hebrew root for that is nun ayin peh. And it literally means to strike, right? The idea of striking something, right? The actual word is same letters, nun ayin peh, and it means to strike, smite, worse, plague, hunt. Ultimately, it means to be touched. It's the touching. When you strike something, you're physically touching it, right? So understand that if every plague is under the authority of the Most High, meaning that he issues the plague, that means the Most High is touching you, right? It's a touching of the Most High. That's literally what the Hebraic definition of a plague is, right? Now, let's go to Revelation 16. We're going to come back to Matthew 24, but I want to show you according to what Revelation says regarding the plagues. Revelation 16, real quick. And again, this video is not going to be too much longer than the other video, but the Most High wanted me to go into depth and show you what the text is saying about how this is the beginning of sorrows, right? So, Revelation 16. And let's go to verse 9. Verse 9. And men were scorched with great heat, and blasphemed the name of Yahuwah, which has power over these plagues, and they repented not to give him glory or esteem. Now understand that there is a deeper context to this, but for time's sake, I don't have time to go into the full context of this, but understand that this scripture is referring to end times, one of the plagues that's being poured out over the earth. And it literally says that men blasphemed, meaning spoke against and talked down of, gave credit to someone else when it was really the Most High doing this. That's what it means to blaspheme. It means to impersonate, to take the credit of something that really Yah's doing and give it to the devil or give it to someone or something else. So sometimes you'll hear our nation's leaders refer to this plague as a plague from the invisible enemy. No, it's from Yahuwah. Why? Because in the second part of this verse, it says, the men blaspheme the name of Yahuwah, which has power over these plagues, right? So understand, it don't matter what type of plague it is, it comes from the Most High. And 9 times out of 10, the people that are being judged and taken out and falling, destroyed from this plague are people who, guess what, did not repent. What does that mean? That means when they had the opportunity to seek the Most High, they heard about all this information that we got to keep the law, statutes, and commandments, believe, which means to follow, to cleave to be firmly rooted in the Messiah, meaning we do what he instructs us to do as well as what he did and what he taught. Think not that I've come to destroy the Torah, but to fulfill. They rejected it. They didn't repent. They didn't turn and press towards the house. Instead, they kept going in their direction, which was against these commandments, right? So I just wanted you to understand that plagues, they're not just random. They're under the authority and the power of the Most High, right? So just wanted to point that out. Go back to Matthew 24, right? So let's pick up where we left off. We were at verse 7, where he said, nation shall rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in diverse places, right? And we went over all that. We see that we've physically experienced and witnessed this going on currently. Let's go into verse 8, which is kind of like our key verse, if you will. And this is, again, Hamashiach, our Messiah, speaking and answering the questions of the disciples who asked him, how do we know the end, the signs of the end times? He said, all these are the beginning of sorrows. Hebrew word, bereshith, same word as Genesis. The beginning, the head of something, the beginning, meaning that it's the start of something and other things are coming later, but this is just the start of something, right? He literally says, these are the beginning of sorrows, right? So understand that the time period that we're in, as far as this judgment, this is just the beginning. Keep in mind, there will, and this is the Ruach leading me to say this right now, the Spirit, the Ruach, there will be a second wave of Yahuwah's judgment. It's already underway. Just how when you're at the beach or at the ocean and you see a wave come in from the water and it reaches, the sand and it reaches a certain amount of land from the beach. It covers a certain amount of sand, right? A lot of times you'll see that water go back into the ocean, right? And when the water comes back on that second current or that second wave, a lot of times it reaches further than the first wave did, depending on the current of the ocean and how strong the tide is coming in. Understand that this second wave is going to be much greater and much stronger. More people will die. More things will get shut down. More fear and franticness of the citizens of not just this nation, but nations all over the earth are going to be in a panic, which means, guess what? There's going to be a shortage of more food. There's going to be more famine, which is why I'm telling you all right now, stock up on water, stock up on food. Don't let them lie to you and convince you into just having to depend on them for everything. If you have land and you have a big enough backyard and a big enough yard, hey, grow your own food. You can go to Home Depot. You can go to Lowe's. You can go to, there's several places that you can go to and get seeds to grow your own food. Yes, especially if you're in a climate that's relatively warm. Now here we're in Michigan, and 50% is cold, 50% of it is warm. So yeah, we can grow our own food during when it's warm out, but in the winter, that's why I'm saying get bottled, or not bottled, but canned food, right? So that you can store food. My wife was even talking about possibly getting some dried fruits and veggies, which you can do that as well because it preserves the food for a certain amount of time. And you want to do this because why? Eventually, let's say electricity goes out, you still want to be able to eat. Let's say the power and the heat goes out, you still got to be able to eat food, right? You still got to have water to drink. So understand, we are in the beginning of sorrows, right? Now, I do want to go back to Revelations and just show you, because in the last video, I mentioned how, according to all plagues, going back all the way back to the captivity in Egypt, where we were delivered from by a strong hand of Yahuwah. He, with a strong hand, delivered us, hallelujah, from that captivity. But in the book of Revelations, it talks about angels being commissioned by the Most High to pour out wrath and judgment over the earth, and they go in phases as well. Go to Revelation chapter 4. Hallelujah. And I pray that this gives our people some insight and some understanding on not only the times that we are in, but what to do in these times. Because in all you're getting an understanding, right? Revelation 4. Now, again, this is after our Hamashiach. Of course, the whole book of Revelation, let me just give a context here. The whole book of Revelation is the apostle Yohanan, also known as John, the Revelator. He had a vision. He was stranded on the Isle of Patmos, which is an island in Asia, not too far from Asia Minor, between Europe and Asia, in that area. He was stranded on an island in that area, right? And ultimately, he had a vision, right? And he says on Yahuwah's day, which we know is this Shabbat, he had a vision, right? And in this vision, it first began with him, well, not to go into too much detail, I'm just kind of giving you an overview. But in chapter 1, it first starts off a vision of Hamashiach, a physical description of him having hair like lamb's wool and feet of as bronze as if it had been burned into the fire. So that's how we know regarding our people, regarding our Messiah, we are a people of color, period. Non-debatable. After that, in the second chapter and the third chapter, you begin to hear the words of Hamashiach speaking to some of the set-apart assemblies that were in Asia Minor, right? Assemblies that had been scattered, and he had specific words to each assembly. I'm not going to get into detail about that now, but after those two chapters, now we're in chapter 4. Chapter 4 goes into detail regarding the end times and the throne of Yahuwah, right? Also, a vision that John saw. As a matter of fact, I'm changing that. Let's go to chapter 6, because chapters 4 and 5 still go back into the vision of what John saw. But as it relates to what we want to look at now, praise Yah, we're going to go to chapter 6 in Revelation. I know I said chapter 4. I'm sorry. Still read chapter 4. Really read the entire book of Revelation as much as you can to get insight on this end time. But for time's sake and for the video's sake and for the specific knowledge that the Most High is giving right now regarding end times, we're going to go to chapter 6, right? We're going to go to chapter 6, right? And because, again, we're talking about how the wrath or the judgment of the Most High, it's in phases and in waves. It's not in just one fell swoop, right? So we'll go to chapter 6. So chapter 6 begins, again, with another vision from John. And he says, "And I saw when the Lamb opened one of the seals, and I heard as it were of the noise of thunder, one of the four living creatures saying, 'Come and see.'" Now, again, you would have to read chapters 4 and 5 to get the full detail of this, but for time's sake and just for the understanding of the specific time we're in now, we're going to stick with chapter 6. And he says, "And I heard it as it were the noise of thunder come out of the four living creatures saying, 'Come and see, come and see.' And I saw, and behold, a white horse, and he that sat on him had a bow, and a crown was given to him, and he went forth conquering and to conquer." Now, understand, a bow is, understand, same terminology of like a rainbow, right? But understand, a bow is a weapon of war, right? A bow, you put a bow and arrow, you put an arrow in it, you pull it back, and when you release it, after you pull it back to a certain distance, you release the bow. where does the arrow go? The arrow, it shoots and it destroys it hits its target. 9 times out of 10, whether it's hunting or whether it's for war purposes, it's to kill something or somebody. So this white horse had, and really what it was is it's an angel. I'm gonna just be honest with you. That this terminology, for time's sake, these are angels on these horses that they're talking about. That sat on it, he had a bow. That means he had the intention to conquer, meaning war, right? What did we just read in Matthew chapter 24? Nation will rise against nation. So there's literally an angel over the wars that take place on this earth right now. And it's commissioned by the Most High, right? Let's go to not chapter 2, verse 3. And when he opened the second seal, right? Now this is Hamashiach opening the seals, because nobody else, if you read chapter 4 and chapter 5, you'll see nobody else was worthy of opening the seals that were written in the Lamb's book of life, right? That's why he's our Hamashiach. That's why we have to be covered by his blood, because there are things, because he's Ahad, meaning one with the Father, there are things that he can do that we can't do, which is why we have to be in him, and we have to trust him and follow him and believe in him and obey what he tells us to do, right? Verse 3, and when he, talking about Hamashiach, had opened the second seal, I heard the second beast say, come and see, right? So understand, with the first seal, there was a first beast, and there was a first horse and a first angel. Now there's a second seal with the second beast and a second angel. And let's see what this second beast and angel on this horse does. And I heard the second beast say, come and see. And there went out another horse that was red, and power was given to him that sat thereon to take peace from the earth, that they should kill one another. And there was given to him a great sword. You literally hear Hamashiach say this same verbiage in Matthew chapter 24. The sword, right? That is death by the hands of men. A little bit different from war. I mean, kind of the same concept of war, because in a war, men are killing each other, men and women, whoever is participating in the war. The goal of one army is to kill the other army. But this type of sword is different because it's literally talking about all men on the earth. This is not just a war between nations. This is a war. This is deeper than just war. This is the sword, death for survival. There's going to come a time period where people will be running into other people's houses just for survival, for food, right? And you've seen glimpses of this in other nations, in Venezuela and in some of the nations in Africa. You've seen this, where to survive, they live by the sword. But scripture also says, he who lives by the sword also dies by it. So you don't want to live by killing. Of course, if you're a man, protect your family by all means. First, by seeking Yahuwah and covering them with the blood of the Lamb and following his law, statutes, and commandments. The Most High will have his hand over those who are seeking him. But still understand, as a man, it is your duty to protect your family, right? So, again, inquire of Yahuwah as it relates to that. But we see that the red horse, it came with the red horse, the angel that was on it had a sword. So we see the first angel with the arrow, or the bow and arrow, if you will. He went forth to conquer. That's war. Now we see this second horse, this red horse, the angel on it had a sword. So it's a little bit more into detail about what's going to happen. Understand that these two things didn't happen at the same time. Now, the first horse, I personally believe, based off of what we've seen with all the world wars and as much death that has already come from wars, this white horse has already been here for thousands of years, in my opinion. Well, I don't want to say thousands of years, for a very long time, in my opinion. But as far as this red horse, we're seeing that recently. We see it with guns. We see it with the murder rate in our communities, in our nations. We see it with the gun laws and everything that's happened with that. We see it with how the police do our people. Not just the police, but just, the nations that hate us in general. We see that, right? So yeah, different time periods, a different wave of judgment, right? Different wave, just like how Hamashiach said, wars and rumors of wars, famines and pestilences, and earthquakes in diverse places, phases, waves. Same thing here, phases, waves with these horses. And you could read this for yourself just by going through the book of Revelation. Starting in chapter 1, but specifically in chapter 6, we see that all of these angels, all of these beasts and these horses and these angels have a specific assignment, and it's to bring destruction to the earth. It's a form of the Most High's judgment. Verse 5, and when he had opened the third seal, I heard the third beast say, come and see, and I beheld, and lo, a black horse. And he that sat on him had a pair of balances in his hand. And I heard a voice in the midst of the four living creatures say, a measure of wheat for a denar, and 3 measures of barley for a denarius. See that you hurt not the oil and the wine. Don't have time to go too deep into it, but that denarius is a form of currency right now in the Middle East. Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and several other nations, they use the dinar as their form of currency. So understand, this third beast, or this third horse, this black horse with a pair of balances in their hands. The Most High revealed this to me years ago in a study when I was studying this, about 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago, that this is dealing with, of course, the currency. Because a dinar is what? It's a form of currency. So it's dealing with the currency as well as the economic stability of nations. What does all that mean? Ultimately, that means that the price of food, that's why he says a barley of wheat for a denarius, right? This is tying into a famine because you need money, you need currency to be able to purchase and buy food right now in the global economy. I hate using that term, but the worldwide, I'll say, economy that we live in. So understand that this black horse has also been here, I believe, for a very, very long time. Hadn't reached America yet, but guess what? It's here, right? And COVID-19, the pestilence that it is, has opened the doorway for a lot of these other forms of judgment to make their way over the earth, specifically here in this land, because this land is the land where we have served. This is the land that has the chosen people of the Most High. And just like how Genesis 15 says, where the Most High gave Abraham a vision of his ancestor, or not his ancestors, his descendants being taken away into captivity in a foreign land that's not theirs, and they will afflict them 400 years. We have been in affliction here for over 400 years as of August 19th, 2019. So understand, it's real. It's real. And that's why it's just now hitting here. Trust me, other nations have had their judgments underway, but it's really just now hitting here. Why? Because the 400 years, we're past the 400-year mark now. And what did the Most High say in Genesis 15? He said, after that time period, I will judge that nation that they will serve. So understand, America is under judgment. Verse 7, and when he had opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth beast say, come and see. And I looked, and behold, a green horse, right? And his name that sat on him was Death. And Sheol, or hell, followed with him. And power was given unto them over the earth. Over the fourth part of the earth, to kill with the sword, with hunger, with death, and with the beast of the earth. Now, all I got to say is with that fourth beast is a combination of all of the different forms, which we're starting to see now. We're still getting killed here. People are still dying with the sword. There's still a famine. There's still a shortage of resources of food to go around right now. Even though there is food and the stores are open, understand that doesn't mean that the judgment isn't still underway. Same thing with the sickness. People are still dying, not just from this disease, but other pestilences that the Most High has allowed to go forth. So understand, according to what this text is showing us, we are in the beginning of sorrows. And it's up to us to really seek the Most High and get revelation from Him to receive, I guess you could say, a covering, to be covered, to be protected during these times, because it's getting, things on the earth getting real. I say that in a song, but in all serious, and I mean, it's serious in the song too, but I'm saying this is proof. What we're reading is proof that things on the earth are getting real. So it's time to get more and more close to the Most High by seeking Him, praying. Gotta go on a fast, y'all. Gotta start fasting. Gotta start seeking Him and stepping outside of our flesh and our own understanding to hear every single step, every instruction that He wants us to do. Do you want me to work right now? Do you not want me to work? Do you want me to do unemployment? Do you want me to start stocking up on the house with food and water? These are things that you have to seek the Most High on. But I'm going to tell you for myself, as for me and my household, we preparing for sure. First, by studying this text and seeing that it is the Most High's hand that's going to protect us first and foremost. So no gun, no knife, no camera system that you get, none of that stuff. I mean, I'm not gonna say it's wrong to get those things. Be led of the Most High. You know, if He's leading you to get those things, get them. If you feel that's what you need, get it. But understand that the protection is going to come by obeying these laws, statutes, and commandments, and trusting Him and being more connected to Him and following based on what He's telling you to do first and foremost. Everything else, yes. Do I personally believe a man should be able to protect his household? Absolutely. I do believe that. But understand that the first line of defense is Yahuwah. So I pray that this video has been encouraging. More videos will come as the Ruach, the Most High, leads. Again, every Shabbat, we're going to be going forth with live lessons and teachings and worship. And we're going to be obedient to what the Most High is telling us to do. And that's to strengthen Zion in these last days, because they are last days. So Todah, Rabah, meaning thanks multiplied. Thank you for watching. Please share. Please subscribe if you have not subscribed. And yeah, seek the Most High with all of your heart, all of your soul, and all of your might, your resources. Shalom, everybody.